There are some that will point out, as we read in verse 31 of Genesis chapter 1, that humanity was created on day 6 of creation. And they will try to connect that to the number 666. But I find personally that that's not very beneficial for understanding those numbers or their significance. The text tells us what we need to know and how to properly identify the number itself and how to connect it to a specific person, which plenty of people have attempted to do. Hey everybody, it's Tim with Uniform Members for Christ, and we are back again with another Genesis walkthrough video. We're in session 6 today, and if you did not catch session 5, wow, did you miss out on what I think was a lot of valuable information about what it means to be created in the image and the likeness of God. I will link session 5 below for you, and then that'll take you to the playlist where you can find the previous 4 videos before that. Okay, today, as I mentioned, we're in session 6, and without further delay, we're going to get right into it. Let's read verse 28 together. It says, "And God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Okay, so what I want to highlight in this passage actually is the phrase, blessed them. So in Hebrew, we're talking about the word barak. All right, so to bless. And we have a habit of saying, especially in the West, specifically in America, bless you, or sometimes you might even hear God bless you in certain circles, okay? But usually that's connected to somebody sneezing, or if you're in Alabama where I'm at, when you leave the grocery store, they might say bless you. That's something that's kind of popped up more recently. Have a blessed day is specifically what they say. But what exactly do they mean by have a blessed day? And do they understand what they're saying, or is it just a cultural phrase now that really doesn't carry much meaning? Well, let's actually explore that. See, in the Bible, when we're talking about God blessed them, and that's Adam and Eve, he goes on to give the blessing, be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth, and have dominion over it. And he's talking about over the fish and the birds and the animals and the earth, and the plants, fruits and seeds, etc., etc. So that one is a way that we can understand that a blessing is more than saying God bless you, or more than saying bless you or have a blessed day. Let's look at something else. You can actually find this in number 6, 24 through 26, and it's actually the Aaronic blessing. The priest Aaron would bless the people with a priestly blessing. And it goes something like this. "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace." Now, you may be more familiar with the Carrie Job version, the blessing that came out, I believe it was during COVID. And it actually is, "The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace." Now, I'm just quoting that off the top of my mind, okay? So that might not be exactly, but that's pretty close. So let's look at a few more examples of blessings that happened in the Old Testament. Melchizedek, he blesses Abraham in Genesis 14, 18 through 20. Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. We all know how that went, right? It really was, Rebekah was desperate to ensure that Jacob gets the blessing, and she went through pretty extreme measures to ensure that that happened. And then we see Esau coming in, and he is begging and pleading for a blessing. Moses blessed Israel in Deuteronomy 33, 1 through 29, and then Balaam is forced to bless Israel in Numbers 20, chapters 23 through 24. So we have in the Old Testament, especially during the period of the patriarchs, that blessings from fathers to sons was coveted. We see the links, as I mentioned, that Rebekah went through, right? And these blessings, actually, when you study them, for instance, the ones that Jacob pronounced over his 12 sons and then over the sons of Joseph, they really are prophetic in nature, and they go on to kind of either determine or foreshadow who these nations will become as a people, with some exceptions from time to time. So here's a question. Now that we've kind of mentioned that blessings are a little bit more than just saying God bless you, there's actually substance to it. Does that shed a little bit of light for us on Romans 12:14 that says, "Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them"? Or how about James 3, 9 through 11? It says in verse 9, with it, we bless our Lord and Father, and with it, we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. Verse 10, from the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? And it would be a shame to leave the New Testament without pointing to Jesus when able. In Luke 24, verses 50 through 51, verse 50 says, and he, that's Jesus, led them, that's his disciples, as far as Bethany, and lifting up his hands, which is, by the way, what the priest would do in the Old Testament, he blessed them. And this, ready? And it says, while he blessed them, he parted from them and was carried up into heaven. While we are not told in the Bible how Jesus blessed them or what words he used to bless them, we do understand that it was more than using the words, God bless you, as he ascended into the heavens. There was some sort of blessing pronounced over them as Jesus ascended. And I wish we knew exactly what he had said. It's kind of a shame, actually, that we've lost the understanding of blessings and their true intentions and the power behind them. Although some denominations will still pronounce the priestly blessing over the people after each of their meetings, you've probably heard them say, rise for the blessing. Okay, so let's move on. That is enough on that topic. Verse 29 says, and God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all of the earth, and every tree and seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. Verse 30, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the ground, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food, and it was so. Verse 31, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good, and there were evening and there was morning the sixth day. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the previous few verses, but we are going to talk about verse 31 because something very interesting happens here. We're dealing with the sixth day. And before we move on to chapter 2, we need to point out that something happens in the book of Revelation that people often tie back to this verse. And we're going to look at chapter 13, starting with verse 16 in Revelation. Let's read it together. Verse 16, also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead. Verse 17, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is the name of the beast or the number of its name. Verse 18, this calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of man, and his number is 666. Now, we read the previous two verses for context. Verse 18 is the one that is particularly important to us at this moment. There are some that will point out, as we read in verse 31 of Genesis chapter 1, that humanity was created on day 6 of creation. And they will try to connect that to the number 666. But I find personally that that's not very beneficial for understanding those numbers or their significance. The text tells us what we need to know and how to properly identify the number itself and how to connect it to a specific person, which plenty of people have attempted to do. First, the number is specific to the person, as I just mentioned. Verse 17 tells us that. Let's look back at it real quick. It says, no one can buy or sell unless they have the mark. And it says, that is the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. And that is why so many people have used the gematria, which is a Hebrew numerical system, to assign numbers to people throughout history. And it hasn't succeeded yet. It's not to say it won't succeed. It just hasn't succeeded yet. But I think there's probably a better way to kind of identify this coming leader. We'll talk about that in a moment. So, the number, as I mentioned, is specific to the person, or in other words, the beast or the man of lawlessness, or as you probably know him better, the Antichrist. Second thing that I want to point out is that the number is directly connected to this person, and it is for a very specific purpose. It's placed on the right hand or the forehead, and it's applied in some yet unknown manner, but it is specific to commerce, buying and selling. While some speculate that this could be a microchip or a barcode or a digital tattoo, the Bible doesn't specify how the mark would be applied, only that it will be a clear requirement for buying and selling. And I might mention, technology is increasing every day, and there is really no telling what kind of mark this will be that contains the number, this person's number, whatever that ends up looking like. There's no telling what type of system this is, but it does seem to be a stamp or a mark, potentially a tattoo of some type, some sort. Okay, so why don't I connect the number to the sixth day of creation or to figurative language in general? Well, mainly because of the statement we find in verse 18. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. This implies there is a mystery surrounding the coming world leader and requires a certain type of understanding. In my view, reference in the 6 days of creation doesn't add anything meaningful to our understanding of this prophecy. It doesn't help us calculate his number, whereas understanding that we're dealing with a one world government system where a certain number is required to buy and sell goods does a lot to help us understand. As we watch the world stage and the various world leaders that emerge, we might be able to identify a person, possibly from the ancient region of Assyria, who has both the capability and the ambition to create a one world government built around potentially a digital currency, which is exactly how you would stop people from buying and selling. You can control that. So although I do lack understanding of calculating his number, I do have the understanding that we're dealing with a person that will very likely arise in the Middle East and have the power to bring a coalition of nations together. And he will also have a lot of power on the global stage. So that's why many theologians and scholars, when we talk about this, we start talking about the one worldwide government. That's why everybody's always been looking at the United Nations or these other coalition groups. There's a lot of problems with that right now. And there's also a lot of interesting aspects of those coalitions that could develop into a further one world type system. But anyway, all of that aside, it is a specific person with a lot of power who has some type of number associated with them that will be used for buying and selling. And in fact, even now, you might know that China has a digital currency and America is racing along trying to keep up with that and create their own digital currency. We have no clue what that's going to look like in the future or up under the current administration. But we do know that that is a serious potential for the future, is no longer having paper currency, but having a digital currency of some sort. So we're kind of seeing some things unfold that would have been unthought of 50, 60 years ago, but here we are. And that is it for today's teaching. I look forward to seeing you next week, and we're starting chapter 2. Woohoo! All right, guys, thanks for joining me. God bless you, right? Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Take care.